Okay, everyone, welcome to Presenters July. It is already the last Sunday of July, and tonight we have two great guests from Vietnam. They are teaching at a university in Ho Chi Minh City. Could you introduce yourselves at the beginning, starting from Trump?
Thank you for the introduction, Ms. Noriko, and hello, everyone. My name is Jam, and I'm a university lecturer at the Faculty of English, Linguistics, and Literature, University of Social Sciences and Humanities, Vietnam National University, Ho Chi Minh City. It is a very long name, I am aware. And it's always all every time I have to do this is very lengthy. Anyway, it is my honor to be here. I've started extensive reading not so long ago, I think over a year ago. And my first attempt was rather just impromptu, but the second attempt was when I got the help from Professor Rob Waring, and I've met wonderful people of the Extensive Reading Foundation and the World Congress that I went to last year as well. So it's been a great inspiration and motivation for me to keep going. So yeah, I've been doing extensive reading and I can't wait to show you what I've been doing by myself and also with my colleagues in the last semester. So on to you now, Lurry.
Thank you, Tram. Hello, everyone. Greetings, everyone. My name is Long Pan, or you can call me Lurry. It's my English name. I currently work as a lecturer at the Faculty of English, Linguistics, and Literature, University of Social Sciences and Humanities, Vietnam National University, Ho Chi Minh City. I know it's a long name too. Um, my first ER implementation took place in October 2025, just last year. Uh, a few months before that, I got to attend the workshop on a series of workshops on extensive reading by Professor Rob Waring, and I got really hooked. And I decided that I want to join the team of implementing extensive reading at our faculty for the first time. And I think in that first experience, I had a lot of career-changing decisions. I mean, I changed a lot of my design and teaching principles and philosophies, and I've been really satisfied with what I've been doing with extensive reading at the moment. I am hoping to attend the Extensive Reading World Congress next year, where I will tell my story about how I began as a person who's not very passionate about reading, but then because I wanted to help my students with their reading development in English, so I've tried my best to develop a reading habits and a reading hobby as well. Thanks, everyone.
Can I just step in for a second or two? So I'm the person responsible for introducing these two. Just to let you know for a context that the Extensive Reading Foundation is working very, very closely with the university to set up ER programs, and they're sort of driving the ER initiatives in Vietnam. We're going to have an extensive reading workshop coming up pretty soon and various events. We've got various projects coming up, and these two people are the ones seriously driving this initiative. So they are definitely the up-and-coming stars in Vietnam in the future. So please enjoy listening to them.
Hey, thank you everyone for your introductions, and we would like to start the presentation starting from Trump. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see what's on my, yeah, okay, that's great. All right, so allow me to begin. Once again, my name is Jem, and I'm a university lecturer. So the context I'll be having for this presentation is a Vietnamese EFL university classrooms. And it is a great honor to be here to share with you my journey of implementing extensive reading. So the name of the presentation is Extensive Reading in Vietnamese EFL University Classrooms Towards a More Principled Implementation. So in today's presentation, I'll be sharing with you the context of teaching reading in Vietnam, followed by my 2 attempts of implementing extensive reading. The first time was my individual attempt, and the second one as a peer community of practice, where I got my colleagues involved as well. And actually, one of those colleagues is Lurry. So I will end my presentation with some recommendations for a more sustainable and principled implementation of extensive reading for Vietnamese students. So let's begin. Well, some of you may know that in Vietnam, English is one of the most common second languages for Vietnamese learners. English proficiency is undoubtedly of great interest for parents and for students, clearly, because it opens doors to knowledge and also study abroad opportunities. And so if English is so popular and of great interest, it begs the question, how is it taught? And is it effective to improve students' English proficiency, or is it simply just to pass the test? So for more detail, then traditionally and still ongoing, English in Vietnam follows the approach of teaching to the test. That means a heavy focus on test taking. In other words, students, they're learning English intensively. Well, I'm sure that we can all agree to a certain extent that scoring may reflect students' English proficiency, but only on the school ground. In reality, those who score high on an IELTS band, for context, IELTS preparation and IELTS is like really blooming in Vietnam by this point. Anyway, so those who score high in IELTS band don't necessarily speak English fluently or have good understanding of the English language or culture, which I believe is crucial for communication in the real world. Now, I'm sure that since you are all here, you have read about extensive reading, you know about extensive reading, and you know about the benefits of extensive reading. However, this approach has yet been formally adopted in Vietnamese EFL context. And the reason for that, it's rather manifold. First, there are limited resources for extensive reading in terms of libraries, care of English storybooks, and graded readers that are culturally relevant and appropriate for Vietnamese learners. And second, students are typically not motivated to read extensively or simply read for pleasure. They're more used to the common practice of the teachers giving them reading passages, and they just read and then they answer reading comprehension questions afterward for scores. This also means that assessment on students' learning progress heavily prioritizes surface comprehension over contextual knowledge and cultural cues. And lastly, a formal extensive reading program has yet been initiated in Vietnam due to a lack of awareness from the Ministry of Education and Training themselves, despite recent empirical studies on the topic in Vietnam. So now let's get into even more detail from my contacts at the Faculty of English, Linguistics, and Literature. So the first 3 semesters at EF, that's the name of the faculty for short, students will complete English language skills courses to improve their English proficiency from level B1 CEFR to C1 CEFR. So this process lays a foundation of English for students to gradually transfer to more specialized courses designated to their specializations, including English linguistics, English language teaching, translation and interpreting, and finally, American British culture and literature. So you see, it is instrumental that students should read so much more to improve their reading fluency and comprehension to prepare themselves for those specializations. However, students are mostly not exposed to or encouraged to read other materials than the required textbooks. So it all comes down to learner autonomy, their interest, and maybe some teachers' preferences of using authentic materials. All in all, to prepare students for their specializations and future career, students need to read, right? And so much more, and they need to understand even more than what they're already been doing. And I believe that an extensive reading implementation at the beginning of the university journey might be the right path. So, ladies and gentlemen, as a lecturer of the Faculty of English Linguistics and Literature, I've got the opportunity to teach reading and writing skills in a course named Reading Writing B1 in 2 consecutive years and implemented extensive reading in my teaching. So like I've mentioned before, the first attempt was an individual practice, and I'll show you the second attempt later. In this first attempt, please keep in mind that it is, well, technically it's not extensive reading, it's not structured extensive reading, but something that resembles extensive reading under the 4 core principles by Day and Benford 2002. So learners choose what they want to read. The purpose of reading is usually related to pleasure. Reading is individual and silent, and teachers will orient and guide their students. So at that time, I have 3 classes consistent of 92 first-year students. Aside from the required readings in the course book that I have to do, that I ask the students to work on something differently together. We work towards an extensive reading project by the end of the course. And to prepare for that, we went through a procedure of 4 major components, as you can see on my slide. The first is book selection. Students, they will choose a book from a book list that I prepared for them. These books that I selected vary in terms of genres, level of difficulty, and the students, they are allowed to choose books that are not in a list if they wish, but they need to talk with me first just to make sure that they have enough time to read and that the book itself is not too much for them. And the second one is the second component is silent reading. Students mostly read at home, but I did schedule time for them to read in class as well. The third is the book club. This book club were scheduled a few times throughout the course. So this is kind of like I gave them some time and some space for them to share what they've been reading so far and whether or not they're enjoying it in terms of the characters or the plot. The whole purpose of this is to motivate them to read and to make sure that they're thinking of something for their extensive reading project by the end of the course. And lastly is the project itself. And the students, they will present they brought their projects to class in our last session that I would like to call it the extensive reading exhibition. This creative project serves as an instrument to see how the students, they understand the book they've read in their own unique way. And by putting their project on display in a classroom and on that day, the students, they can interact with each other's creative works and inspire one another. It's nice to see them supporting and motivating each other in this way, to be honest with you. I will share with you some of their creative works in a little bit. Anyways, in terms of the data, I did collect some data for this one, including the quantitative data for their interest in the reading and in the project, and also their perception, their enjoyment, and their reading habits or any challenges that they encounter while they read. I would like to share with you some of the book recommendations. So you see, well, the list is actually, I have more books in this list, but I'm going to show you just a few right here. You see that there are native books, there are ungraded material, and there are graded readers as well. This is because even though the students, they are put into one class and supposedly they're at level B1, I'm sure that each one has their own interests and has their different proficiency. So by giving students choices, it's easier for them to decide what they want to read. And it's also better for them as well, for them to see that there are a variety of choices and they shouldn't be afraid of reading just because they don't like reading that much at the beginning. And in terms of the creative outputs idea for their projects, these are just a few of the ideas that I came up with. And then the students, they can also share what they wanted to do as well. So these are some of the ideas. You have the podcast, so in terms of video, you have creative writing, and you also have some digital design too, if that's what they would like to do. So anyways, in terms of the results, over 70% of the students, they enjoyed the implementation, though informally, of extensive reading. They enjoy the break from the intensive reading in class for tests, and well, they got to be creative. However, three challenges prevailed. The first one pointed to the limited number of books. There was a shortage of graded readers available at the faculty library. My book recommendation and the ebooks that I've got for students was, well, my effort, but clearly it wasn't enough to tailor to all the students' wants and needs. In terms of the second challenge, a few students, they prefer movies over books. And certainly there are educational values related to watching movies in terms of extensive listening and extensive viewing as well. And lastly, due to the time constraint and the required syllabus, there were not many activities for extensive reading in the classroom, because at that time I had to work around a given syllabus instead of having one designated for extensive reading. So these challenges pointed to a more systematic approach and joint effort. And that was exactly what I did in the second attempt. But before we get to that, let's take a look at some of my students' work now. So if any of you have heard of Edgar Allan Poe, and then you might have heard of his short story, A Telltale Heart. So this student decided to recreate the story with manga, and he drew this himself. And The Little Prince, I'm sure it's very famous, but this student said, no, I want to make it dark. And so there we go, the Not So Little Prince. And she wrote the story and she made an illustration by herself on an iPad, and then she printed out the whole thing for me and she brought it to class. So that was really great. For those who prefer creative writing, this student wrote a prequel to the main story. If I remember correctly, it's A Girl on Paper by William Musso, and Life of Pi by Jan Martel. So this student rewrote a chapter from the tiger perspective. And so it became Life of Richard Parker, and he made the illustration himself too. Those who like to have more hands-on activities, like the students, she made a 3D book of the story of the book Matilda by Roald Dahl. So it's really amazing. She said that she had the idea from the third session, and we have 12 sessions. And she said that she worked on it after every class, just so that she have it ready by the end, and because she liked the idea so much and she felt really proud of it. And those who are more tech savvy, like this student, he made a video comparing the book Coraline with the movie or with the animation. Maybe I can show you a little bit of it.
Talking about Coraline, a novel written by Neil Gaiman in 2002, and it was made into a movie in 2009. So I'll break down some small details to compare the similarities and differences between the two versions of Coraline. We will also explore what makes each one unique, based on the core plot and some details I've noticed. I've come up with a theory about the ending, which has also been shared by others, and I was inspired by Maximo Esco.
Yeah, so yeah, that's that. It's a quite lengthy video, and some students they prefer that. We watch it in class as well, and all the students they were cheering as they watched the video. All right, so that was for my first attempt. In my second attempt, I was lucky because this time I've met Professor Waring. I have attended his workshops, and I even got to go to the Extensive Reading World Congress '6 in Hokkaido, so that was amazing. And so it's really inspired me to try to implement extensive reading the second time that is more structured. So here we go. I try to adhere to more principles of implementing extensive reading. So in this time, out of 10 principles, I got 3 more compared to the first time. So how exactly did we do it? In this second time around, we got 131 students, 4 EFL lecturers, including me, and the world-renowned extensive reading expert. So in the planning stage, we adapted the existing syllabus to have more extensive reading components, including 45 to 60 minutes for extensive reading in class, and a graded reader from the series Footprint Reading Library of National Geographic Learning. we try to match the topic of the graded readers to the coursebook unit. So for example, if the coursebook reading is about, let's say, melting ice caps, then the graded reader is about polar bears. So during the time for extensive reading in class, we planned for a sequence of pre, while, post reading activities to activate the student schema on a topic, and then we give them many opportunities to interact with the content in various ways after the reading. And I will share with you an example later. Secondly, to address the challenge in the first attempt, I brought more books back from the Extensive Reading World Congress last year, courtesy of the Extensive Reading Foundation. During the scheduled silent reading time, students had more books to choose from, and they were asked to record their reading in a reading log that I kept in an Excel spreadsheet as well. Third, instead of going solo and found myself lost during the implementation, this time I had the support and observation from Rob, just to make sure that I was on the right track, and he gave me oral feedback as well as written feedback. And lastly, since my second attempt was my colleague's first attempt, we occasionally organize discussion to inform our subsequent practices, to making sure that we are trying our best to achieve what we set out for. In the second attempt, I was interested in the students' perceptions, their reading speed, and also the teacher's perceptions of extensive reading. So this is an example of an extensive reading oriented session. So I have multiple reading challenges vary by the difficulty level. And then we get to the reading itself. And after a reading, I ask the students to think deeply upon these open-ended questions. Of course, there are no right or wrong answer. And I just would like to know how they understood the relationship between the geisha and her trainer. So what they actually did was that I made a Padlet like this, and a student, they can choose among the 4 questions that, well, quite different from each other, and they can share what they think about it. And I will be reading those and answering their respond to their responses, and other students are also expected to do that as well. So we created a kind of like a safe space and a supportive one for students just to freely share their thoughts without the fear of judgment. And I think that's really important. All right, so let's look at the results then. So I think you can all guess that it's quite similar in terms of the students having positive viewpoint about extensive reading and the activities that focus on reading for understanding, reflection, and interaction, rather than just the comprehension questions. In terms of the student reading speed, however, there was not a significant improvement. Well, this could be due to the time pressure or the environment or students' anxiety. On a brighter note, though, the teachers reported that the students' writing has improved in terms of idea development. Their writing has a more logical flow to it, and they can make use of the input from the reading. The teachers also reflected that there is a transition in their role from a controller to a facilitator. They facilitated, they guided the students in choosing books to read, discuss with one another, and freely share their thoughts. Some challenges still persist. The limited number of graded readers to be used in the classrooms. I mean, there was an improvement, but still it's not enough if we do not have a system of library and if we don't have the local resources for extensive reading and for graded readers. Some teachers, the 4 teachers, they felt some form of pressure still, especially in terms of balancing the amount of time for extensive reading while still having to keep the other required components of the existing syllabus. So the question here is not about the effectiveness of extensive reading anymore, I believe, but rather how we can move to a larger implementation and a uniform one at that. So to move from an individual practice to a larger scale practice, it's clear that more stakeholders need to get involved. And personally, I believe that we're at a quite good timing. And why would I say that? So currently what we're doing is we're integrating extensive reading into an intensive reading curriculum. But at the moment, well, since last year actually, the Ministry of Education and Training has put forward the directive to position English as the official second language in schools in a period towards 2045. So they want to make Vietnam, or at least the school environment, not EFL anymore, but towards ESL. Moreover, at Vietnam National University, Ho Chi Minh City, the proposal on enhancing English language competence for education, research, and international integration has been in discussion in 2026. So English has become the medium of instruction globally, and interaction as well. So in order to train our students to become global citizens, English language is undoubtedly needed. But at the same time, knowledge about the world, knowledge about culture of any fields is all the more critical. And I believe that extensive reading where students receive a massive input and engage with the input meaningfully fits almost perfectly with Vietnam's new language policy. So what should we do at this stage? From my understanding, the first thing we need is peer communities of practice. This will sustain extensive reading programs long after the initial enthusiasm fades. An extensive reading conference in Vietnam that let Vietnamese practitioners talk to Vietnamese practitioners. And third is policy and institutional awareness to empower teachers instead of relying on individual teachers' resilience. And so as we're speaking as of now, in October 2026, actually October 15th, 2026, we'll be having a workshop on extensive reading 101, or extensive reading for low budget. And we'll have the extensive reading foundation board directors coming, talking about extensive reading. And at ISEL, the International Conference on English Language Teaching, we have an extensive reading symposium where these experts will be having a discussion on the opportunities and challenges of implementing extensive reading in Vietnam towards the goal of having the Vietnam Extensive Reading Association, just like in other countries too. Okay, anyway, so thank you very much for your attention. What I'm trying to say is that extensive reading works, and we encourage you to give it a try. For a future generation of ESL learners who can use English to communicate meaningfully and not just a label on their profile. And like I've said before, I would love to build a community of extensive reading in Vietnam, same as in Japan, in South Korea, in Thailand, in Indonesia. So feel free to talk with me about extensive reading, and I will be continuing to talk about extensive reading in my future career as well. So thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'd like to accept some questions and maybe comments for Trump before we go on to the next presentation. So, any questions from the audiences? Actually, today we have many audiences, so.
I have one question, which is about English education in Vietnam. At what age do students start learning English? So do you have, I'm assuming there is quite a lot of English education throughout elementary, junior, senior, high school. Is that consistent, or do you have a few students who start university at a lower level? Like what kind of level are we talking about?
Okay, thank you for your question. So I would like to address the age where students start learning English in Vietnam. So English has become the compulsory subject in schools starting from grade 3. So that is about 8 years old that it becomes compulsory. But in big cities, or like in the central cities like Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi, in those big cities, the parents usually they would start their children's English education really early. So even before grade 3. maybe even grade one, and some students, some young kids, they start learning English very young, like 4 or 5 years old already.
Thank
And
you.
to address another question you were asking me, students, they start university early. Is that your question?
More like, do you have students who, when they start university, have a lower level of English? So, or is everyone starting at a relatively high level?
Okay, so by let me see. So if we're looking at the statistics, it would say that all students, they should be at around B1, so about pre-intermediate when they start university, following the national entrance exam, national university entrance exam. However, I believe that it's not the reality. So for my case, at my university, we're lucky because it's the Faculty of English, Linguistics, and Literature. So the students, they already have a certain level of English proficiency. It's just that they don't have, well, the majority don't have the reading habits or reading culture, or especially that is in English. But for other universities or for other students, I don't believe that it's a rather uniform level, and it's really varied, depending on where you live and which university you're attending.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Okay, we have another question from David.
Thank you. Thank you for your inspiring presentation. It sounds like there's lots of wonderful things that you're doing with your students, and it always makes me happy to hear things like that. I've got a lot of questions, and I don't think I'm going to ask you all of them just out of fairness. But um, the first one is, how did you measure speed? How did you measure reading speed?
Okay, so for the reading speed, so what we did was that we worked together with Professor Rob Waring. We took some readings from Lurry, you gotta help me with this one. I might forgot some details. So we selected three readings from the series Footprint Reading Library. So what
Mhm.
we did was, I think if I remember correctly, by the third or the fourth session, we cut the reading into half. So let's say it's
Mhm.
700 words. So for one time, we chose three readings, and each reading contains about 350 words.
Mhm.
So the students, they only got a chance to read it once.
Yep.
And that's once they finish their reading, for each reading, they will stop the timer, and then they will flip the paper, and then they will answer the questions at the
Okay.
back. So it's a little bit of still reading comprehension questions. But like I said, they only got the chance to read it once, and we make sure that they only read it once. So the purpose is not to read too fast, but rather they need to understand what they're reading in order to answer those questions. So after that, so the span of like the course is 12 weeks. So by the end, by session 11, and that is when we give the students the second half of those readings, still
Got it.
with some comprehension questions. And what we would like to see is whether or not the time spent on the two readings have any, well, significant change, and whether or not the students have the correct answers as the same as the first time.
Okay, so a pretty standard reading speed measure. Did you have a control group too that did not have the extensive reading that you could compare it to?
Unfortunately, we did not
No.
have a control
Okay.
group. No.
Got it. Got it. Um, okay. Thanks. Um, can I ask one more? Sandra, is that okay? Noriko, Sandra,
No problem. Okay, go ahead.
is that okay? Sorry. Um, I'm really interested in the reading, your extensive reading projects. Um, just for a bit of context, I teach middle school. My students are grade 6 to grade 8, which means they're from about 12 to 14. And I've been doing extensive reading for quite some time, and I think I have this probably overly rigorous interpretation of extensive reading, and I don't really give any work to the kids. It's just reading, and I track their reading, and I reward them for their reading, and I follow up. Um, but um, I don't have them do any writing really, or projects, or make videos or anything because uh, I'm just worried that that might interfere with their reading for pleasure. And I'm starting to wonder now if I have an over conservative interpretation of what extensive reading is. And I'm just wondering, how do you balance that so when you give projects, that the students don't feel the pressure that this is just some more reading work that I have to do, as opposed to learning how to read for fun and develop that reading habit. And I'll ask you, Professor Tram, and anybody else that would want to chime in and tell me that I've been doing it wrong for the past 2 decades.
Thank you for your sharing, and I think it depends on our different contexts too. And I think that I'm pretty blessed with the students that I work with. Because yes, it comes from, I think partially it comes from my motivation towards the student and my words of encouragement to them. But at the same time, I think they're also quite motivated as well to do something to illustrate their understanding of what they've been reading. So for my context, the students, they have had years and years and years of drilling the reading skills, skimming, scanning, that's all they ever do. And they're getting sick of it. That's what they told me. So when I introduced this creative project to them, I said to them that I don't want them to treat this as an activity that were for the purpose of scoring. So what I want them to do is that this is a safe space for you to be creative, and there's no right or wrong answer. You and your friend might chose the same book, but that doesn't mean that you have to be the same in your project, and you might understand it differently. And it doesn't matter what you do, as long as I can see that it's you on in that project, your authenticity, your originality, and your creativity shown through it, then it's great. And I believe that to a certain extent, us as educator, as teachers, you can see whether the students they put in the effort. And I think that's what really important. Another one that I try to do with my students is that when I gave them the list, I will share with them a little bit of my interpretation, or whether I like or I dislike the book. And I'll tell them this book is about this, or I don't like this one because, it's like this, like that, like that. And that kind of piques their curiosity a little bit. They would think like, why would Miss Jam say that? What's going on here? Let's explore. And so what we do with each week is that I check up on them to see if they have decided what books they have read, or what that they decided that they want to read. And of course, they have a chance to switch to another book too if they don't like it the first time. But all in all, I think it's all about you creating the kind of classroom environments that the students they feel supported, they feel safe, and that they don't feel the kind of pressure, the negative pressure that they have to be better than anybody else in the classroom, is what I would think about this one.
Yeah, I really like that idea of allowing or providing the opportunity for students to have some sort of creative expression without the pressure of being assessed or grades. I think removing the assessment aspect certainly can make it more interesting.
To be fair, to be honest with you, I did have the assessment for that one. But it's more about task completion, like I told you. I told them
Okay, then I
upfront.
retract everything I just said.
I did tell them upfront that this is not so much about the score. you will get a high score. Don't worry too much about it. I just want to see you in that project. And they all get really high score and they didn't feel the pressure that they have to do amazingly. Yeah. The reason is, well, is I still have to give them a score as part of the requirement. But it's not really about the score, at least in my class.
Right, thank you very much. We'd like to have one more question before we go on, and we have a question in the chat from Chris. Chris, would you like to ask yourself, or should I read your question? Chris? Okay, then I'll just read it. How students My question would be about how students choose the book or books they wanted to read. I used blurbs from the back of the readers, organized for each level by genre. True. How did the students choose their books?
Okay, thank you for your question, Chris. So what I did was that first of all, I displayed all the books for students to choose from. In the first attempt, we didn't have the book readily available, like the paperback book, but we did have the ebooks. So student, they can see all the books in the list. And like I said, on the first session, I spent time talking with my students about what this book is about, the genre at least, and the level of difficulty as well, so that the students, they can decide if they would like to give this book a try. And I gave them about 2 weeks for them to just just try it out a little bit to see if you like it or not. And then in a third session, I'll ask them again, you still want to read that or you want to change to another book? And they would. Rob is at the airport right now. Just a little bit distracted by him. Okay, anyways. Yeah, so the student, they have the chance to choose a different book if they wish. And in the second attempt, I got more graded readers in the list, and I had the physical copies of the book in class as well. So the students, they can come and they can read the blurbs at the back, like you said, and they can make their own decision. And still, I keep the same cycle that they have until the third session to decide if they want to keep reading the book, or switch. Okay, I
Right,
hope that clears up a little bit.
Thank you very much. Let me see. Do we have any other?
I think we should get on with the next presentation. We can always ask questions afterwards.
Great. Hey, thank you, Tram, for your presentation. And we'd like to move on to Lurry's presentation. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Please wait a sec. Sorry. You see my screen now? Okay. Today I'm sharing with you a classroom story from my Reading Writing B1 Class 2. The title of the talk is Reading is Not Scary Anymore. This slide actually came from a student of mine. And for me, it captures the biggest change that I saw after the course. But today, Perfect AR program, it's about what happened when I started to stop seeing extensive reading as extra reading at home and started to use it as part of my classroom materials design. My message is very simple. Students will read more when the text is right, the task is light, and the feeling is safe. Here's today's roadmap. Plus, I will share with you where I started as a complete novice in ER implementation. Then I'll show you what I tried. Then I will share with you 6 lessons that my students taught me after the course. Then I'll move into the remaining problem, sustainability after the course. And finally, I will end with a practical ER design that any teacher can try tomorrow with a readable text. So my talk moves from problem to practice to student voice and to design. For your information, my first AR implementation took place in October 2025, just last year. And before that, most of my reading lessons followed a familiar pattern, a passage given, pre-teaching a vocabulary, comprehension questions, and then checking answers with students. Actually, there's nothing wrong with this procedure. And many of us teach like this because we believe that this does help our students in some way with the reading. I did it too over a long time. But doing this, I noticed a problem there, a serious problem. A lot of students stopped at the very first unknown words, and their first reaction was to look up the words in dictionary. Reading in such a way became less like exploring a text and more like doing a reading test. Later on, I realized the issue was not student laziness. The issue was reading anxiety and accuracy habits. Probably the texts chosen are too hard, the tasks are too heavy and exam-oriented, and students have started to develop the habits of decoding vocabulary and grammar instead of the text itself. So my question changed from why don't students read to what kind of support helps them keep reading. And let me now share with you the overall picture of my first ER implementation. For this part of the journey, the teacher's work actually began months before the semester started. We 4 teachers in charge of the Reading Writing B1 course sat down together during summer break, and we ourselves experienced about 100 credit readers in the Footprint series by National Geographic Learning. And from those, we selected about 12 to 15 readers that we believed best matched the course book themes and that seemed to have the strongest potential for student engagement. Before I dove deeper into the specific steps that we follow in the class, let me share with you one feature that sets my reading classroom apart from most of the reading classes in Vietnam. It's the reading culture that I try to build. What this means is at the beginning of every session, students had about 20 minutes of silent reading. They didn't do anything else. With the help of a teaching assistant and with a mini library I've created myself, our students had about 5 minutes to choose the book of interests, and then they had 15 minutes to read that book. One important thing is they had the permission to change the book in between if they felt that the book was not the right choice for them. The purpose of this activity was to build a reading culture where reading could become students' hobby, have reading habits and reading hobby. Now let me talk about the procedure that happened after the reading culture activity. After usual things like attention-grabbing images or thought-provoking questions for discussion, I gave students a text to read for the first time. And at this stage, I usually encouraged my students to do very simple things. They could use symbol icons to mark the reading process. For example, a heart to mark something they love, a question mark to mark something confusing, or something they disagree with the author, or an asterisk to mark something surprising, shocking, or insightful to them. Those icons might seem too simple, but they actually gave students a pathway to interact with the text without turning the text into a reading test. Also, at this stage, I usually reminded my students that they don't need to understand every single detail, every single vocabulary item in the text. Reminding students of this point is very important because some of them might have developed a habit of decoding vocabulary and grammar instead of the text itself. So I reminded them that they could skip some detail in the text. They could guess from context. They could visualize a scenario. They could make assumptions and need it like. The important thing here is just focus on reading without doing any comprehension tests. Sometimes I also let them listen to the text before reading it because I wanted to give them an easier, more comfortable entry into the text. Then came talk. Students then shared in groups or in pairs about what they had read by answering very simple questions that tap into their thinking and their feeling, such as what surprised you most, which part stayed with you most, would you agree or disagree with a certain point made by the author? Then came reports. Students reported what they shared in groups or in pairs using simple frames like we think, we felt. One question we still have is and so on. And finally, reading moved into writing. To be honest, we didn't want to design a lot of heavy tasks that follow the reading stage because we were aware that we didn't want students to associate reading with something stressful that follows. But because the course was reading and writing integrated by nature. So the best thing we could do was we tried our best to connect what students had read to what they later wrote. So they could supposedly use some ideas and better yet some language used in the reading text in the later writing. For example, before reading Nine Hunts, which is a story about a Sobo cat having his first hunt in life, the students wrote a definition paragraph on what courage means to them. Or after the Cold War, students wrote a definition paragraph on what freedom means to them. After Dinosaur Search, students acted as a researcher in the story and they wrote a report of the Dinosaur Search. Or after making a deal, students wrote an opinion paragraph to express their thoughts on whether to bargain or not while shopping. These examples illustrate that reading was not something for us to check. Reading became a stimulus for students to think critically and respond, a source of language for students to learn incidentally, and a real reason for students to write. And here are a few interesting key statistics that I obtained after the course. There were 26 post-course responses to a survey that I administered. 21 out of them reported reading English at least once a week now after the course. 15 reported reading daily or several times a week. I know that these are very small classroom data and I'm not trying to claim any large experimental result, but for this classroom, these statistics matter a lot to me. They show me that there were a lot of changes in students' reading behavior, attitudes, and habits. It was not just more reading, it was more confident reading. It was less dictionary-driven reading. And it showed me that ER is not just about adding more pages or more time to your reading. It's also about changing their relationship with reading in a positive way. And let's now talk about the 6 lessons that my students taught me after the course. A lot of students reported that they have now felt more relaxed, comfortable, and confident when seeing an English text now. And this reminds me of one thing. Strategy instruction is not enough if the feeling, the emotional entry is not appropriate. So before reading, I try to open the text with something very human for students. It could be an image, a dilemma, a prediction, or a personal question. To illustrate, before reading a text about gliding across a Gobi desert, I asked my students, you need to cross a desert. Would you choose a scientist with GPS or a local guide? A jeep or a team of camels? I know these questions are very simple, but the thing here is they give students a reason to start caring about the text that we're about to read. The ER principle here is very clear. Students should meet text that feel enjoyable, manageable, and worth reading. So I try not to pre-teach anything in the text. The thing that I tried to do was to create curiosity in students at the very first stage and to create an environment where everything felt very relaxing, comfortable, pleasant, and open enough for students to keep going with the text until the end and over again. The second lesson I learned is choice needs coaching. Extensive reading says that students should be allowed to choose whatever they want to read. And I totally agree. But what I learned is choice alone is not enough. Some students at the beginning of the course to believe that they had to choose difficult books because if they didn't do so, they were not feeling like they were making any progress. So I had to teach book choice. We used the 5-finger rule, which I will then adapt into a 2-finger rule only, thanks to Professor Rob's advice. We previewed topics and genres. Students recommended books to each other, and they had a permission to change books in between if they felt like the book was not the right choice for them. The last point here matters a lot. Because, if students get trapped with a book that is too boring or too hard for them, extensive reading would become painful reading again for them. So choice without coaching is not real autonomy. That's the second lesson. The third lesson is social reading can lower the affective wall. Some students mentioned that they liked activities like book chats, peer recommendations, movement activities. They liked hearing different perspectives from the peers. They liked moving around. They liked not just sitting and reading from a book. But there's a little caution here. Social reading does not mean high pressure performance. Some students still mentioned they disliked debates or presentations after reading because these activities just created extra anxiety for them. So I tried to keep reading light. I tried to keep reading social, but not performative. And it's more importantly, the sharing stage should still feel safe too, not like a public exam. The next lesson I learned is tasks should make reading visible and not heavy. Students could just do something very simple, like enjoyment checks, emotional journey tables, 2-sentence diary entries, book chats, peer recommendations, or selection of one useful vocabulary item. These tasks help me to see the genuine engagement from students without punishing them or penalizing them for giving wrong answers to comprehension questions. So reading was visible. I was able to check whether students were reading or not, but the tasks were not heavy without pressuring students out. The second to last lesson I learned is strategy instruction is emotional support. Students reported using strategies like guessing from context, reading around difficult words, focusing on main ideas, skimming and scanning, reading in chunks, and using dictionaries after trying to infer. The point here is not just strategy drills. The point was helping students keep reading. When students learn that they can skip a hard word and still follow the story, they learn to feel free with reading. When students learn that they do not need a dictionary for every single sentence, reading becomes lighter for them. So what I mean by strategy instruction is emotional support is that this kind of thing tells students that they can keep going with the text despite whatever ambiguity happens to them while they're reading. They just keep moving. And the last lesson is reading gives students something to say. I've given you a lot of examples earlier, so I won't repeat. But the thing I want to say here is reading is usually deemed to be very challenging for a lot of students, especially for those who have limited vocabulary and ideas. So in my classroom, I used reading to make writing more possible because students were allowed to use ideas and language in the text in their paper writing. But the design principle is do not use writing to check whether students had read. Don't say something like, hey, read carefully. Later on, you will need to use what you read earlier in your writing. I never said so in the reading stage. So after the course, the challenge changed for us. At the beginning, the challenge was student fear. They were too cautious readers. But after the course, they mentioned very practical barriers. They wanted to read more, but they are facing a lot of deadlines. They are facing limited book choice. They are facing difficult language use. They've got short attention span and distractions around them, and they've got a personal preference for other habits over reading. So a lot of them also mentioned that they wanted to have more book variety as well. So the thing I want to say here is that the real challenge for us now is not how to begin AR. It's how to sustain extensive reading for students over a long time. That also means that we need an ecosystem or an ecology to sustain it. This ecology would best include motivation, easy access, great variety of book choice, and regular sharing moments between students. Now I want to make this talk a little bit more practical. I'm going to offer you an ER design based on my experience with the last course I had. And you can try with this design anytime, probably tomorrow, with any readable text. First, ask yourself a question. What emotion, curiosity, memory, or dilemma can open the texts for students to feel curious or excited or eager to read? How will I keep reading fluent and not dictionary driven? What light response will show engagement without testing? How can students share safely with one peer or two? And what small writing or speaking tasks can naturally grow from the texts? This is not really a procedure. You can see it as things that you need to take into considerations when you are designing any ER-based lesson. For example, before reading, students can predict a choice. While reading, students should just focus on the main problem, the main narrative. After reading, they share their thoughts and feelings with one peer or two. And after that, they write a couple of sentences from the character's perspective. That's just one example. Okay. Now let's talk about, now I would like to close with this idea. Design for discovery. As teachers, our job is not to be the primary source of language. Our job is to create experiences where our students are allowed to discover the texts, the language through text. It means that our job is to select text carefully, to design tasks lightly, and to protect the feeling of reading. And for me, this is the heart of today's talk. Text gives input, task gives direction, and feeling gives energy. One student said, I now feel that reading is quite fun. Another said, I enjoy reading English more because I understand text better and feel less stressed. And I want to use these sayings to hold on to for my talks today. Thank you very much for your listening. That's everything I would like to share with you today. Here are the references I used in my class and for the talk. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Hey, thank you very much. Now we'd like to go on to questions. Questions from the audience, please. Anyone? Any questions?
Jordan has his hand up. Did you? So I saw somebody with their hand up. David.
David, do you have a question?
Oh, sorry. I thought I lowered my hand. I didn't lower my hand. Okay. No, I don't have a question. Thank you.
Okay.
I gotta go.
All right. My question. Oh, Paul, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, Noriko. Yes, Laurie, thank you very much. It was a very informative and interesting talk, and also Tran, your talk was also amazing. I guess for Laurie, my question is, well, firstly, I really like lesson 4 in your list, and this idea of just using a very, very simple sort of speaking task or simple reaction to just to see how the learners felt about reading a book, and also to sort of discreetly check whether they actually read the book is something that really resonated with me, because we do the same sort of thing. So I really thought that was, yeah, a really good idea. I guess I was just wondering, do you ever assign books to your readers ever so often and just say like, okay, read the same book and then we can discuss it together as a sort of group or community in the next class? Or is it always a sort of a choice for you?
Actually, there are two kinds of reading in my class. Individual reading, where students could choose whatever books they would like to read, and community reading, I would say, where students were reading the same thing. I projected the reader on the screen, and everybody read the same book at the same time. And then we had discussion on the same text. So there were two kinds of reading, not binary, one. Yeah, not either of them, but both. Yeah.
I guess
Has that answered your question?
Yes, thank you. My follow-up is, do you see any sort of advantages or disadvantages to these two types in your experience?
Yeah, according to extensive reading, students should be allowed to choose whatever they want to read, right? So it's free reading, and I try to integrate that into my course at the beginning of every session, where students have 20 minutes to read their favorite book. If they did not finish the book, they were allowed to borrow the book, and they were allowed to bring the book home. Of course, they had to return next week, and students had the opportunity to choose the book that they liked and they really enjoyed reading. So it was individual reading. One advantage that I observed from that kind of reading, one little advantage I observed was students recommended the books to their peers. So I think it was a very human thing to do, because instead of some of the students had to experience the book themselves and then realize that, well, the book is not right for me. Recommending books to each other was a great thing. A lot of people do that in real life. So that's one little advantage, but one lovely advantage that I observed. About shared reading, everyone reading the same thing in class. I think the key advantage was that they had a platform to express their feelings and express their thoughts on the same thing, to compare their mental representations. They probably had different understandings of the same thing. So I think that the shared reading activity was a great chance, a great platform for them to really to critically compare their understandings and to have different perspectives on the same thing, to develop the critical thinking and the imagination as well.
Thank you very much, Laura. Yes, that's basically the sort of same sort of ideas that we got in our program as well. And but there's nothing more powerful than a student recommendation to another student.
Yeah.
Is there? But are you using e-books or print books? You're using e-books, aren't you?
I used both. I had a
Okay.
library of about 150 physical books I bought myself right before the semester began. I also had some ebooks provided by Professor Rob Waring, the series he wrote himself. So I gave students two choices. They could read the physical books I provide to them, or they could choose to read the ebooks I put in the Drive folder. I also provided them with, I also recommended the website National Geographic Reading Something, where they could access a lot of online articles, probably of their true proficiency to read. Because some students in my class were at really high level, and they felt that the books I provided them were a little bit too easy for them. So they felt discouraged at times, although the sharing moments were a great opportunity to compare their thoughts and feelings. But some of them still felt that they had to read something at their true level, because some of them really reached about B2 or C1, although it was a reading writing B1 class.
Yes, that's so true. With assigning reading, you're always going to sort of miss the reading level of certain readers, aren't you? In a certain sense, yeah. Thank you very much, Laurie.
Okay,
Thanks for your questions.
Any other questions from the audience?
Just a comment about your cat, I think. Yeah.
Yes, I have 3 cats, and they always disturb me when I'm on Zoom. Actually, my question was the same as Paul's, but I have another question. You mentioned diary entry, and nowadays a lot of the students kind of cheat by using AI. Does that happen with your students? And if so, what are some measures that you take to prevent them from using it?
Yeah. So it's about how to prevent students from using AI to cheat with writing, right? Is that your question? Yeah. Because those activities I did in class, the student had to participate on task. I mean, on the spot. They had no chance to use any technological tools to help them with the writing process. So they had to answer promptly, instantly after I gave them the task. So there was actually no time for them to use ChatGPT to answer my questions. But I did encourage them to use ChatGPT. Actually, I encouraged them to use ChatGPT to give them feedback on their writing at times. The reason is I believe that writing is not just about writing for you to read, for yourself to read. You write for everybody else to read, and I want to broaden to diversify the amount of perspective that students can have towards their own writing. So, apart from my own feedback, apart from their peers' feedback, I also encourage them to use ChatGPT to see how an AI tool, an AI chatbot responds to their writing. Of course, they had to do the reading in class, but then I asked them to bring the writing. I collected the papers, I get them feedback, and the next week I asked them to bring their writing home. They typed their writing piece down and they put it into ChatGPT or whatever AI chatbots that they like, and they got feedback from those AI chatbots. In another class, I also encourage students to use up to 3 AI chatbots to compare the AI's feedback and comments and scores to see how diverse AI's perspectives are towards their one piece of writing.
Interesting. Thank you for your answer. Okay. I never thought of having students compare different AI. So that also encourages them to read more.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the audiences? Anyone?
I'm just wondering if we should read some of the comments. There was a little bit of talk in the chat before Rob had to leave about the 5-finger versus 2-finger rule when reading. So people often talk about the 5 unknown words per page, but Rob recommended 2 unknown words per page, and he's written quite a lot in the chat about that, which I think, Lurry, that was what you were referring to, that he had advised.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I would like to thank Rob for answering that challenging question for me. I initially used the 5-finger rule, but when I reported that to Rob at the end of the semester, Rob told me that it would be better to use the 2-finger rule because students should feel as easy as possible to keep going with the text. So it would be better scenario to allow students to let students use the 2-finger rule instead of the 5-finger rule.
And he's written here 98%, which is the two fingers out of the 100
right,
words.
Wrong. Exactly.
98% coverage of non-words is a standard measure to maintain comprehension and to give them enough comprehension to enable higher order thinking skills. If it is too dense, it restricts them to remembering type comprehension questions, and they can't answer whole text questions such as evaluating, summarizing, creating if it is too dense. So that's his comment there.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
I'm just looking through to see if there's anything else in there. There's quite a few comments and things. Chris did ask, what did students think about reading physical books versus reading ebooks or online books? Did they have a preference, or was it ambivalent?
Uh-huh. I didn't survey them on this, so I cannot say for sure, but I would tell you about this from my own personal observation. During the course, in the middle of the course, a lot of them still enjoy reading physical books because they enjoy the feeling of holding papers on their hand, because they haven't been doing this for a long time in their life. A lot of them couldn't afford to buy physical books, lots of physical books for themselves. But towards the end of the semester, towards the end of the course, they had to work on a portfolio where they chose 2 credit readers to read and 2 online articles to read, and to do some follow-up tasks to complete the reading portfolio. A lot of them at that stage rushed to finish the portfolio. Then they preferred to do online reading instead of reading physical books. So that's one little change that I saw from my students at the end of the semester. But during the semester, I think they still preferred physical books.
And there's also another question that's come up here, and forgive me, I do not know Vietnamese, but I believe it could be Tan Nguyen. Can you talk more about the whole process that you prepare physical books? Any things that you think should be kept in mind when choosing physical books?
To be honest, I didn't plan anything when choosing physical books to buy for my students, because the number of credit readers in Vietnam is very limited. Was very limited at the time I bought those books. So I tried to buy all the books available in the e-commerce market that I accessed at the time. So there was very limited choice on my own too. So I just bought whatever was available. But there's a lucky thing. There's a book provider that sent me a list of more credit readers from their library, from their stock. And I think there's more choices for me this time. So if you're interested, you can take a look at the list I've sent you. If you want to buy books of your student interest, I think that you should survey their interest first. Of course, you need to have a class at hand now to do that. You survey the interest, you survey the preferences before you choose to buy books, especially considering you have limited finance to do that. Another thing I learned after the course is about giving books to the students. What I mean by this is, at the beginning of the course, throughout the course, I gave them the same library of the same books of about 150 books. And at the end of the course, a lot of them reported that they have become a little bit bored with all the books I gave them, although it was 150, So what I learned at the end was, next time, if I do it again, I would definitely classify the books into groups, probably levels or genres or topics. And every session, I would just give them a certain group of books instead of everything at once, to stop them from feeling bored too soon with all the books I have. It's kind of so psychology there, I think.
Yeah, that may be true. I realized from my experience of teaching that students prefer to read genres that they read in their mother L1. Do the students in your school or in Vietnam in general, do they do a lot of reading in elementary schools, like in L1?
I don't think I can say it for sure. I don't think I can say it for sure, but I think it's 50-50. Like 50 Vietnamese students out of 100 would read a lot, would read as a habit and hobby, and the other 50, me including, wouldn't read as a habit. Previously, I never read as a habit or a hobby. But attending a lot of workshops, I then tried my best to develop a reading habit. And I found that reading really helped me to broaden my horizons about things, previously I just read books that are really beneficial for my career, my studies. But I am now, and developed a habit of reading for fun, for pleasure. You have a question?
No, I would just like to share the context and the situation that we have at hand by this point. So recently, the government, particularly and also the Ministry of Education and Training, or the Department of Education and Training in Ho Chi Minh City, that where we live, it's currently they're trying to push forward the idea of reading, not particularly in English, but at least in Vietnamese. So around the cities, there around and throughout the years, if I've seen like I think in the past 2 or 3 years, they've put I think starting from after COVID that they start thinking of the idea that reading is crucial, not just getting all the high scores in schools. So around the cities, you would see a number of events and book fairs and just basically get people to read. And not only on the street, you would see that broadcast on the news as well. They will be talking about, there's an event about reading, and lots of students, a lot of children coming to this event, and that the parents, they're paying attention to students reading, and I think reading is important. They will say things like that. So I think, and that's it's a very positive side of what's going on right now in Vietnam. Maybe not English yet, but at least they are trying to build a reading culture. And I think that is a good starting point before we can move from Vietnamese to English reading.
About what percentage of students in the whole of Vietnam proceed to university?
Oh wow, that's a difficult question that I don't have the answer to. Lurry, do you have any statistics for this?
Nah, I think I don't. Um,
No.
but I think the population is growing as people are caring more about education, higher education nowadays, even postgraduate studies. So too. So I think the entire population of students proceeding to university is growing year by year.
I see. Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Sorry, I was wondering, so one of you mentioned that in Vietnam, you were starting with SEFA B1 level students. That's much higher than like a typical entry to a Japanese university. Is that typical in Thailand or Vietnam? Thailand.
Vietnam.
Vietnam. In your country? Is that a typical starting entry level, like SEFA B1?
The reason is because for the English textbooks in high schools, so our high school ends in grade 12, and by the end of the by the end of the school year, then the students will be expected to get to at least B or no, like maybe A2 plus or B1 around pre-intermediate level. The reason is because, like I said before, it's the National University Entrance Exams, and the exam that they put up for students to sit, that one is at B1 level or even higher than B1 level. And so
Sorry, you mentioned that's national university. That's a sort of a slightly higher level than a typical
no, what
public
I'm trying to
university.
say is that so after grade 12, if they want to go to university, they need to take this entrance exam.
Right. Okay. I see.
And that standardized exam is set at B1 level at least.
For this particular type of university. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I got it.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Oh, yes, Dang.
My name is Han. Yes.
Hi.
Yes. First of all, I just want to say thank you, a huge thanks to the two presenters. A lot of encouragement for me to start diving into extensive reading. But can I please ask this question to Miss Noriko? Is it okay? Is it okay? Because your question to Miss Jung about the reading culture in Vietnam, right? And I'm really curious about how reading culture has been built and developed in Japan, because I've heard a lot from many scholars that the reading culture in Japan is really strong and prospering. So I'm really curious about this. I know it can be a big question, but I hope you can give me some information and hopefully some resources for me to look into detail how the reading culture in Japan has been developed throughout the years. Thank you so much.
Well,
Yes.
because I'm an English teacher, I'm not so strong with the Japanese education, like the national, like the L1 language education, especially in elementary school. But in Japan, it is quite um, popular in elementary school that they do a lot of reading, not just the textbooks, but also like normal books. So, for example, many parts uh, of Japan, they have a first book given from the local government to new moms when they have a baby. So they get new books and they're encouraged to use the local libraries. Also, in elementary schools, they have like an hour, like once a week, where the class visits the school library just to borrow books. So it's kind of nurtured in the elementary school system. And many of the Japanese teachers try to encourage students to keep reading after they proceed to junior high school. But of course, gradually in junior high and high school, because in Japan, a lot of students engage in club activities, they become so busy and don't read as much as they did in elementary schools. I hope that answers a part of your question.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much.
Yes. Well, any other ideas from other countries? Because we have international audiences today. How do your country nurture reading to kids? Sandra?
Well, I mean, I can only speak to the Japan situation, but I would say, in addition to what you said, yes, they get busy with club activities, and also I've seen just anecdotally the change from less reading and more manga. And that has been a huge shift in the last 10 years, where I see students who before probably would have been reading novels or longer books or just non-text, text rather than picture books. And now there's a lot of manga, which no problem with that, but it seems to have replaced a lot of the reading time that they would have given to reading non-manga. At least that's anecdotally what I've seen with my students. And then it just kind of fades away as they get older and get phones. So once they get the phone, that's unfortunately where the attention goes.
Yes, that's true. Once they're given their phones, yeah, they stop reading. We also have a little comment from Chris in the chat. The Catalan government um,
Gave
sent out,
vouchers,
yeah,
yeah.
they gave vouchers to be used in bookshops to promote reading, to encourage people to go to bookstores. And that is for children at the age of 6.
I think like building a culture is really, really important. And I think in Japan, the culture, elementary school, they've done very well to try and promote reading and get students involved. But I feel like more could be done after that elementary school to try and keep students, not just everyone, more connected to reading throughout their education. So,
That's true. In Japan, for the elementary schools, the government tries to place school librarians in each school. But when they get into junior high school, there are many libraries that have no one attending. Mm. So that's because budget-wise, and also lack of librarians, like school librarians.
I was going to add
Sometimes,
also, this is such a focus on passing exams as opposed, yeah, in Japan, probably other countries as well. Once they get older, it's just, your top priority is passing exam to enter the next school, as opposed to actually enjoying language or enjoying life in general.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. But a lot of the Japanese teachers mention that the reading habit or the reading, what do you say, skills are built mainly at elementary school. So the more reading students do in elementary school, the more high academic level they can achieve in later life. And a lot of parents are aware of that, but it doesn't always mean that it works with all the children. Great.
and I think
So,
also in Japan there is more access to books. So I'm not sure how it is with Vietnamese texts, as in non-textbooks reading, whether or not that it's you have a good library system there, or whether or not there is a lot of books. But in Japan, we are very, very lucky that we do have very good access to books. So, yeah.
that's true. Great. Okay. So, any other questions or comments?
One thing I just looked something up. I think Paul, you asked about the English proficiency among Vietnamese university students, right? You were surprised how high it is?
Yeah, that's right.
So one thing that might be a factor is that as far as I understand, in Vietnam, it's a much smaller percentage of the population who's attending university, and therefore you're generally your better students. I just did a quick search. I think in Japan, 57% of the population has a bachelor's degree, which is one of the highest in the world. Where in Vietnam, it's more like 11 or 12%. So I think it's only your top students, and therefore they're probably better at all academic top subjects than your typical Japanese, who you might say almost tertiary education is almost, I wouldn't say mandatory, but it's almost universal.
Okay, interesting point. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, because when I took classes with J.D. Brown, he pointed out that Japanese always do the worst in Asia on the TOEFL exam at that time. Again, because it was the most amount of students who were actually taking the TOEFL exam compared to other countries, because it was just an economic issues that everybody in Japan could afford to take it, and therefore did. In other countries where it was relatively expensive, only those who thought they could do well or needed it were taking it, which is why the statistics showed that the Japan is always the worst. The Japanese students are the worst at English. No, that wasn't the case, because you aren't exactly
Just a
comparing apples and apples.
higher percentage going to university.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I work at a national university graduate school here, and we have a large number of Vietnamese students, and their English is fantastic. But obviously, we're talking about a very small percentage of the Vietnamese students.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see that. Yeah, interesting point. I just want to actually, now that I'm sort of blabbing on, going back to Laurie's comment before. This is kind of unrelated to what Paul was saying, but just ever since I've been involved in sort of ER programs, I've actually started reading more myself. It's kind of funny. And I found myself recently on my train commutes reading paper books and just really, really getting into them. And these are because until that, I just did a lot of reading related to my research or my job. And I've rediscovered the joy of reading myself, to the point that I've actually started reading a lot of student graded readers. And started to have a lot of really interesting conversations with my students, not just about reading in general, but actual readers that I'm reading and so on. That has made a big difference to my learner or student motivation. Surprisingly so. We can actually talk about books we've both read and yeah, just a comment there, and it's made a difference. Another thing is I think reading ebooks has a lot of advantages, definitely, but also reading print books. Um, you do get less distractions putting your device or your cell phone or your smartphone away in your pocket. And there is a definite advantage to that as well. But, they both have their merits. Sorry, I just wanted to sort of sneak that in there.
But Paul, I'm curious. Just are you? Because I know you're using X reading. Are your students also using physical books, or are they? Is it? I don't know if you're using the M Reader quizzes, or are they just reading X reading, the books on X reading?
Our learner's just X reading at the moment.
Okay, so when you talk to them about books, it's books that they've read on X reading.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And the ones the graded readers that I will be reading, I'll be reading through the X reading platform. But obviously, the reading I'm doing myself is the paper novels. But yeah, the beauty of the ebooks is that you can sometimes assign a reading and have, say 50 students reading the same book at the same time, and you get that really good sort of conversation the next week about what happened. But the flip side is, with the print books, you can obviously sort of read for longer and less distractions, I guess. So yeah.
Have your students realized that you have a bunch of books on X reading? Has that? Do you tell them, or do you let them figure it out themselves?
Oh,
You
me
must have
myself.
about 50. You have about 15 books now.
I think, I don't know. On X reading, maybe 25, but
Okay.
yeah. Sometimes it happens to pass that they've read one of the books I've published and or authored, and yeah, that becomes even more interesting. But I have to be careful how I sort of say, do you like the book? Because obviously they're going to say, oh yeah, we love your book, because that they're my students. But I'll say to things to them, oh, so you read my book? So who was your favorite character, or which book of mine was your favorite? Because obviously they're not going to give me an honest answer if they if they ask me like my book.
But you never had a student come to you and be like, I just read a book by somebody who has the same name as you, so they know it's you.
So, well, actually, sometimes it's Paul M. and it's Paul Matheson, but yeah, well, yeah, yeah, they usually click onto it.
Okay.
But yeah,
It's a unique name, so it's not the most common name. So,
but to be honest, the students we're using X reading with are not really. We don't. We sort of our assigned reading is more non-fiction based.
okay.
So because we're doing professional communication, where the assigned reading part is more sort of the Halico, the business readers, or the things, the ways to series, because they're sort of more in line with the course content. But like Laurie said before, or maybe it was Tran, sometimes we'll give them a group of readers for their extensive reading component and say, okay, you choose a book here within this group, and there'll be a lot of non-fiction books there. And sometimes my books will be there as well, depending on the level. But yeah, it's interesting. But it really makes a difference. You actually reading or knowing about the books you're asking the students to read. So yeah, just in my experience anyway. Sorry, I'm rambling on a bit.
No,
I'm going to shut up.
I'm just wondering if we should wrap up the recorded section of this so that we can just make sure everybody who needs to ask a question now, so we can stop the recording
I
and then
think
move on.
Jordan has a question.
Yeah.
Raise your hand.
Not really a question, but just wanted to thank both presenters for coming on, and especially Lori. A lot of the university age students that I teach are quite low level that I'm doing the extensive reading with. So like the idea of a lot of these activities for that are like really, really low stakes, like really quick interactions with the text, like with the icons and everything, I think are really, really easily implementable. And I'll probably be looking at doing so here pretty soon. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that idea.
Where do you teach?
Uh, I teach at a vocational school at
It,
Kanda Kanda Institute of Foreign Languages.
okay, in Kanda, in Tokyo.
Yep, that's
Oh,
right.
great.
Thanks. So yeah, thank you for that.
All right, thank you. So yes, we'd love to wrap up. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks everyone for coming. We're not stopping the session, we're just stopping the recorded part of the session. So thank you very much to both of our presenters, and this recording will be available on YouTube for you to watch again.